Hi everyone. My name is Colin Opie. I was born and raised in Carmel by the Sea, a small coastal town in California. My family wasn't well off, just making ends meet, so I didn't have the opportunity to go to college like many of my friends. After high school, I started working at a supermarket as a sales clerk to help support my family. Life was a bit rough, but I knew it was my responsibility to contribute to the household income. In early 2020, when I was 25, I met and married my husband. He was 3 years older than me and worked as an auto mechanic in a small garage in town. He was calm and quiet, which made me believe we could build a stable life together. My husband is Chinese American. His family is a mix of two cultures, and it fascinated me. His mother, a typical American woman, is open and friendly, trying to preserve traditional family values. She leads a modern lifestyle, participating in community activities like yoga. My father-in-law, on the other hand, carries the traditional views of an older generation Chinese man. He's in his early 50s, retired, and acts as the spiritual leader of the family. After we got married, life wasn't luxurious, but it was simple, and I was happy. I believed that as long as we were together, everything would be fine. But as time passed, the mental and physical deficiencies in our relationship began to erode our initial happiness. My husband, despite his strong appearance, is very weak when it comes to intimacy. His issue with premature ejaculation became a constant disappointment. I tried to hide my frustration, but it was difficult. More than a year into our marriage, we still hadn't conceived a child, which added more pressure on me. My husband is the only son, and all the responsibility for continuing the family line rests on him. His younger sister is still in college, and marriage and children are far in her future. The pressure mounted, and I could feel the silent expectations from my in-laws weighing heavily on me. One evening, my husband's parents called us for a serious conversation. My mother-in-law gently suggested we see a doctor to make sure everything was okay. She didn't say it directly, but I knew she was questioning my fragility. I felt ashamed as if it was all my fault, but my husband reacted defensively. He refused to even consider seeing a doctor, protecting his ego. The room was thick with unspoken disappointment. I felt trapped between my role as a wife, expected to bear children, and a husband who refused to face reality. As time passed, the tension in our house only grew. Every meal, every encounter with my in-laws became filled with silent pressure. Their words of concern cut deep, and I felt like I was drowning in fear and guilt. Then, one night in September 2021, everything changed. My husband had a party at work and came home late. My mother-in-law was at her usual yoga class, leaving me and my father-in-law alone at home. I never thought he could be a threat. After showering and changing into a comfortable dress, I made dinner for the two of us. I didn't think much of it, just a normal evening, but when I walked into the living room, my father-in-law's gaze lingered on me in a way that made me uneasy. After dinner, I was washing dishes when I suddenly felt arms wrap around my waist. I turned, panicked, and saw my father-in-law standing there. I couldn't believe what was happening. He whispered in my ear that he would help me get pregnant, and a shiver ran down my spine. I wanted to scream to push him away, but I was frozen. His actions were swift and violent, and I couldn't stop him. When it was over, I collapsed in tears, but he calmly said he did it for the good of the family. I didn't tell my husband. I didn't know how to. I was afraid that the truth would destroy our marriage, so I kept silent. But the fear of being alone with my father-in-law haunted me. The way he looked at me changed, and I knew it wouldn't be the last time. It wasn't long before it happened again. One evening, when my husband was working late and my mother-in-law was out, my father-in-law approached me once more. This time, there was no hesitation. He forced me into the room, and I had no choice but to give in. What disturbed me the most was that, despite my fear, I felt something I hadn't felt with my husband: pleasure. My father-in-law is experienced, forceful, and dominant in a way my husband had never been. It confused me, filled me with shame, but I couldn't deny that part of me was drawn to it. Afterward, we continued to meet in secret. Every time my husband was aware my mother-in-law was occupied, my father-in-law would find an excuse to be alone with me. I felt trapped, sinking deeper into this relationship that was tearing me apart inside. A year later, I gave birth to a baby boy, and my in-laws were overjoyed. For them, it was the fulfillment of everything they had hoped for. But for me, it was a constant reminder of the terrible secret I carried. My son was the result of a forbidden love.